Hi guys and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. I'm Srboljub Stojanovic and today we are going to talk about an affordable DAC and also headphone amp coming from FX Audio. It's DR07 and this one is only $169. But as we learned in the last few years, that still doesn't mean that we are getting bad performance out of this one. So let's see what DR07 is all about. Now let's start looking at the back and the connectivity of this unit. You can see your typical USB, optical and SPDIF coaxial inputs. There is also a Bluetooth antenna for wireless connectivity, and on the output side there is RCA single-ended line output. But there is one thing that is not that usual, and that is digital optical output. So if you for any reason want to output your signal digitally to some other device, you can. In the front you can see that there are two headphone outputs. Both are single-ended. It's just for convenience. You have one that is 3.5 millimeters and the other one 6.35. Then on the left you can see a small display. It's of an OLED type, monochromatic, but it has the basic info that you need to operate this unit, and I can easily read everything on it if I squint. And I won't bother you with much technical details because that's usually not all that important. Let's just go through basics. It's based around an AK chip. I'll put the exact model on the screen. And then we have XMOS USB receiver that enables you to play all kinds of high-resolution files and formats. And when it comes to the headphone amplifier part, it has respectable, I think, around 1 watt into 32 ohms. That gets lower with higher impedances, but when a starting point at 32 ohms is 1.1 watt, we have respectable powers at all impedances and with all headphones. And just one last thing that I wanted to mention, in the back you can see 12 volts DC input, meaning that the power supply is located outside of the unit and you get this small switching power supply wallward. But I'll talk about the importance of that and its impact on the sound fidelity a little bit later. I started testing FX DR07 as a whole, a DAC and a headphone amp, just using it with my headphones. And what I noticed first is that the sound fidelity is mostly neutral. Basically, it's almost perfectly neutral. The balance between the bassline and the mid-range and highs feels flat to my ears. Bassline has decent punch and depth, but it doesn't have any kind of warmth. Mid-range is really revealing, the edges are clear and crisp. You can hear a lot of things going on in the recording. You can hear details from acoustic instruments and vocals. And then finally highs, they're also really open, and there's plenty of details in higher regions. They're well extended, but not harsh or annoying in any way. Now dynamics is also good. This unit sounds snappy and quick and has good rhythm and pace, and it's just fun and engaging to listen to. And if there's anything that I could possibly complain about is that the sound staging is nothing spectacular. But I guess at this price point it would be too much to ask for some huge and airy soundstage. To sum it up quickly, we are talking about one tonally very neutral sounding DAC and headphone amp with plenty of drive and snappiness and dynamics and engaging sound, and moderate soundstage that's not too wide or too airy. But to fully assess its worth, I went on and compared it to several different products of a similar price that I already reviewed, and one of them is SMSL C200. Now I think I reviewed this one a year ago or something like that, and I kept it all this time because this is one of my favorite combination of a DAC and a headphone amp at this price point. It has full, lush, slightly warm sound that I really like. It's not really as sharp focused, and it doesn't have as much details as something like Topping DX3 Pro Plus, but it has much fuller, healthier tone timbre, and it's just tonally richer and, for me personally, nicer, more musical to listen to. And when FX Audio DR07 is compared directly to this SMSL, you do notice that it doesn't have that warm sound signature of SMSL. It sounds a little bit leaner but also tighter, and you notice that probably most easily in the bass region. Both bass and mid-bass region, actually. Everything is a little bit firmer and tighter and leaner with FX Audio, but a little bit warmer and softer and in a way bigger, but also appears a bit slower on SMSL here. Aside from that, the rest of the spectrum is pretty much comparable. We have similar detail retrieval in the mid-range and in the high frequencies, but because that bass line is a little bit tighter and leaner on FX Audio, it feels like upper frequencies, mid-range and highs, are a touch more prominent. SMSL here has all of that enveloped in a little bit more bass and mid-bass, and it does sound warmer and a little bit bigger in terms of sound staging. Now the difference is not big, and I would say that both C200 and DR07 perform in the same tier, but I do give slight advantage to SMSL C200. That said, it's so slight that it goes under personal preference and also headphone matching. So for example, if you have brighter sounding headphones like AKGs, you're probably going to prefer SMSL here. But if you have warmer, bassier sounding headphones like Meze 99 Classics, for example, you might as well prefer FX Audio here, because it would push these upper frequencies and upper mid-range a little bit more forward, and you do not need any more bass warmth with Meze 99 Classics. But I was curious because SMSL C200 has AC power inlet, power supply is inside the unit, and you cannot upgrade that. But as I said, FX Audio has 12 volts DC input, and it comes with this small looking wall wart, which is the switching power supply, quite cheap as you can see. And then I tried upgrading it with 12 volts hifi Power X, which is also a switching power supply but of a higher quality. And that's interesting. This one is $110 US, which lifts the price of FX Audio, actually that whole set, to $270. But in that case, the performance of FX Audio increases noticeably, and now that leaner and slightly drier bass line gets a bit of heft and fullness. And all other tones throughout the whole frequency spectrum, they start sounding a bit fuller and tonally richer, and the sound stage opens up. Now that narrow sound staging that I was talking about, it grows. And then DR07 fully matches SMSL C200 in terms of that how full and tonally rich it appears, and even surpasses it actually. I feel that there's more dynamics and more authority in the bass line of DR07 with this power supply. And that sound staging, while pretty much equally wide and spacious, there's better layering, and then tones and instruments feel more firm and more palpable in their place compared to softer and hazier SMSL C200. I was so happy with the performance of FX DR07 now that I was curious to compare it to more expensive SMSL DO400. Now this one, as bigger, pricier and more powerful SMSL, definitely sounds better than C200. It has a more open sound stage, better detail retrieval and richer tonality, and I'm happy to say that now with this aftermarket power supply, DR07 is actually much closer performance-wise to DO400 than it is to C200. That level of detail retrieval, tone texture, just punch and dynamics is much more comparable to DO400. If I would to split hair, I would say that DO400 still has slight advantage and slightly bigger sound staging and just a touch richer tonality, but they're so close that we are talking about just few percentage difference. And given that DO400 is actually a really good DAC and a headphone amp, fact that DR07 with this power supply, which lifts the total cost to $270, is even able to go head-to-head with this SMSL is fantastic in my opinion. And it makes DR07 quite good purchase as a device that performs really well on its own, but has an interesting upgrade path. If you ever decide in the future that you want to upgrade it, you can do that by using a better power supply. Of course, this iPowerX is just one example of a decent external 12 volts power supply. There are many others on the market. But let's move to the next part, which is DR7's DAC output, line output on the back. I compared it quickly to a standalone DAC, which is a great standalone DAC, SMSL D6S. And this one is a slightly pricier standalone DAC, which has AC inlet, so the power supply is inside, and it also has balanced outputs. So I started comparing them to be fully fair. I started comparing them both using single-ended outputs. And I was surprised that FX audio here is quite closely matching the experience on pricier SMSL D6S, which is on itself one of the best sounding standalone DACs around $200 that I've tested. So on the first listen they sounded quite similar, and I had to go through several songs and listen to critically to realize that D6S still holds a bit of advantage by sounding touch fuller and a touch more engaging and a little bit, yeah, just fuller in tonality, but the difference is very small. That said, once you actually use balanced outputs on D6S, the performance of this one increases. And then it does sound better than FX audio here. On the other hand, once again, if you use a better power supply with the DR07, it once again catches up with D6S. But in this case, it does cost more than D6S, which means that if you only need a DAC, only line outputs, a great standalone DAC like SMSL D6S will still be a slightly better performer. But on the other hand, if you need a two-in-one device, something that has headphone amplifier inside, but also has a very decent DAC output, FX Audio DR07 is as good as it gets below $200. It can go head-to-head with anything that I've tested close to that price. And if you ever decide to upgrade it with a better power supply, it actually kicks things up a notch and it sounds like $300, $400, $500 DAC and headphone amp combos. And that makes it very appealing to me. It's very good out of the box, but if you decide to spend a little bit more down the line, you can upgrade it and make it simply great. And with that, I think it's time to end today's video. I hope you liked it. See you next time.